Hello, I'm John Grom, and welcome to our 73rd Right and Left Discussion Forum. We televise our panel discussion twice monthly to demonstrate that one of the best ways to learn is to listen to the opinions of others with an open mind. We will know that we have succeeded when we understand an opposing view well enough to explain it and defend it. We often hear that Americans are afraid to have a frank discussion about race. It's the elephant in the room that we pretend we don't see. Today we're going to take a close look at that elephant by examining a hot topic in racial discourse. We're going to talk about white privilege. Today's panel, beginning on my left, is Dr. Ronald Chamberlin, retired research chemist. On his left is Bryan Laubaugh, president of R&B Financial Services. On his left is Jim Rivers, the retired elementary school principal. And on his left is Patty Haskins, retired math teacher and member of the Wadsworth City Council. We're going to lead off our discussion today with Dr. Chamberlin. Ron, you've seen a list of white privilege statements by a woman by the name of Peggy McIntosh, who is the Associate Director of the Women's Studies Program at Wellesley University, and also didn't answer her phone this week. But she is billed as an anti-racism activist. As you go down that list of statements on white privilege, what kind of thoughts come into your mind?
John, I'm a little bit bemused like this, as in, what do I think about this? A bit confusing.
That's what I want you to do. Yeah.
There are a number of these things here which are, in a sense, racist because they're a result of neighborhoods, a result of cultural environments. For example, I'll read a couple of them. I'm sure that probably that many of our viewers are as unprepared or unknowledgeable about this as I was when I started looking at it. So, for example, whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color not to work against the appearance of financial reliability. I can be pretty sure that my children's teachers and employers will tolerate them if they fit school and workplace norms. My chief worries about them do not concern others' attitudes toward their race. I can she says that I can don't have to overperform at work to be considered a competent employee. I understand women may have the same problem. So Patty can maybe speak to that. Yeah. Well, some of these are result of where you're living. Going into a barber shop, I don't live in a neighborhood that has to cater to folks with different kinds of hair than what I have. That in itself comes out to be somewhat racial because we have racially separated neighborhoods. Okay. Now, I have, there's one here where she says I can walk down the street without fear of being harassed and stuff. I've been in neighborhoods where a lot of white guys around, I felt I could be harassed. Depends on the neighborhood. Yeah. So I can see where she's coming from, that there may be, because of our culture, because of the way we're set up to be segregated in many ways, that this can come about. Perhaps you also sent out a list of someone given about black privilege. That
was something I just made up. So okay. if you want to blame somebody, blame me on that.
All right, but at any rate, you know, maybe there's something similar from another side. I don't know. The second thing I have to say about that is that this seems to be set up, and I think liberals are maybe more guilty of this than others, are making a moralistic statement here and trying to make me feel a little bit guilty about this, and I don't buy that. I don't feel I'm privileged to be white. I have blue eyes and I'm right-handed. That doesn't make me privileged. That's just the way it was. That's my genetic heritage. Other people have different genetic. We were just talking about that a few minutes ago. So I don't feel that I need to be apologetic about that heritage, about about my whiteness. The other hand, I feel a moral obligation to, when I see racism, to attempt to combat it. Personally, I've always attempted to be as colorblind as possible in my personal relationships with people. I have friends from all kinds of ethnic backgrounds and have dealt in all kinds of situations with that. I feel that I've been accepted by my friends in that way as well. So I don't feel guilty about it. I don't know if I'm supposed to.
Okay. Bryan, I want to hear your comments, but I'm going to warn you that before we're done today, I'm going to ask you about the statements made by a former director of the Mormon Church, or the senior elder, or whatever the head guy is, and I think you probably know what I'm going to ask you, but I will leave you alone for the time being. But where do you come down on all of this?
Well, I agree 100% with Dr. Chamberlin. I was raised in a segregated military community. My father was in the military. Our neighbors, black, Asian, Puerto Rican, they were military soldiers. They were treated with respect. It didn't make any difference if Sergeant Harris was black and his wife was a white German. It didn't make any difference if the lieutenant was a Hispanic and his wife was Korean. There was never, ever any sort of, that I could see, racism in that particular environment. So I went to school with Asian kids, products of marriages. Soldier goes over to Korea, takes a wife, comes home. Didn't make any difference if he was black or Asian or Puerto Rican or Hispanic. His rank determined the privilege that he had.
Let me interrupt you on this just for a moment. And maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't, but were they treated the same in the PX?
Yeah, yeah. As a matter of fact, when it came to rank, when it came to housing decisions, because my dad was only an E6, which is a staff sergeant, we had to wait stateside for 6 and 7 months for housing. So the process was very open and orderly. I never experienced any feeling that somehow the black soldier or the Hispanic soldier was any less than the white soldier. And so it's disappointing when all of a sudden we have this almost kind of like reverse discrimination where I'm supposed to feel somehow that my whiteness created privilege. I struggle with some of those comments. And I've never felt as though I didn't have to prove who I was. Growing up in high school, we lived just across the river from Philadelphia. Some friends of mine decided to go over and mouth off to some policemen. Didn't make any difference. They were white. They suffered the wrath of the Philadelphia Police Department, and their parents came over and had to bail them out. But just because they were white, they didn't get away with anything. So I think we have to back away from this notion that somehow there are these situations. I'm not going to ignore that there are some racist situations that come up. I'm interested in hearing what everyone else has to say, but I think I feel very aligned with what Dr. Chamberlin feels. I don't know if I need to somehow defend my whiteness. I'm not sure that was a choice I had that I made, and so I'm left-handed. I think I can make an argument that I live in a very privileged right-handed world. I had a kindergarten teacher that told me I was pretty stupid because I couldn't write right-handed.
There are more prohibitions in the Bible against being left-handed.
Yeah, I'm telling you. That's I'm feeling pretty put upon here. The scissors. I could never figure out in kindergarten and first grade why I couldn't cut with those tag-on scissors, and they were right-handed. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I probably should have made a complaint to the EEOC or something like that because they didn't make left-handed scissors back when I was in kindergarten. And there were a lot of other things that I think I could probably make an argument about other than my white privilege. So I'll leave it at that.
There's a little bit of a slight that goes with that was a left-handed compliment.
Exactly. Well, we're the only ones in our right mind, so I'm sorry.
Let me ask you this about the Mormon Church. What is the title of the person who is the head of the...
The president of our church.
The president of the church. Yeah. There was a president before Ezra Taft Benson, I think the one right before him, and that he was being questioned one time about the fact that black people were welcome in the church but limited as to where they could rise in the hierarchy. I think they could not become elders or something like that. and he was accused of being racist. He made a comment that I don't think anybody that ever heard it could possibly forget it. Mm-hmm. He said, "I never said blacks were inferior. God did."
Yeah, I'd have to do a little Google search on that, but I know that you know, in the late '70s, that sort of was taken care of. So
I know there were changes.
Yeah,
made.
there were some changes made. I was thinking maybe you might have thought of a statement made by Brigham Young. He made a lot of statements, but not as the president of the church. So Ezra Taft Benson, another one, he served as the Secretary of Agriculture in the Eisenhower administration. Was actually, you know, a high-ranking official in our church, and was a proud member of the John Birch Society. We have all stripes in our church. Harry Reid being on the far left, to Orrin Hatch, and a variety of other people that serve in the government and serve faithfully and serve the country and believe in the Constitution. I think we're trying as a people to be contributors to society. So
didn't mean to put the LDS on the
no, that's okay.
Here.
That's okay.
Jim, you've heard a couple of things now. I'm anxious to hear your comments.
Well, first of all, I want to say that I'm a member of the Ohio Region Anti-Racism Commission for the Disciples of Christ.
Yes.
And so I've been through these exercises, and I've been through this list. And we have a list, but it's not as extensive as this one that you sent, and that we experienced when we went on to the anti-racism in Akron.
Yeah.
I have to say I disagree with the statements that have been made before, because first of all, this list was made up for teaching anti-racism. And
this list or the one
yes,
that you have?
this list.
And it's dated too. I figured out it's probably written in 1988.
Both of them are. And when I first came across this list, I thought, wow, I never gave this a thought, because I just never gave it a thought. And now that I've had the experience of it, I can see this all over places. People say things that they don't really think about because of their skin color. And there are things that I cannot do. And some people say to me, well, you can do whatever you want, but that's not true. Not without having a feeling that I'm going to be ostracized or discriminated against because of my skin color. There's nothing I can do about my skin color. It's there. It's always going to be with me. And your skin color is always going to be with you. And so you can do things that I cannot do, at least not do without having some feeling of intimidation.
But Jim, I was in town when you came back from school and were going through the struggle of finding a house.
Right.
In Wadsworth.
And those are things that I've experienced just because of the color of my skin. I was almost hit in a car with a salesperson, Alex Dombrowski, up in the north end of town. The guy came across the street, across the road, and at that time that street was gravel street. Yeah. And he threw gravel up on Alex's car and scared him to death. Of course, it scared me too. And so I know that these things are true in what I look at.
Some of them.
Yes. Well, I think all of them are. That's the way I look at it.
They can't be.
Yeah. Because what I've learned through the rules and regulations that were set up, they were set up for basically white people, white men.
Okay.
White men. Let me say it that way.
Right, well,
white men.
I know, which makes us even more defensive. Patty, where are you? What I want to do after you've given your comments is I want to read some of these things so the audience knows what we're talking about. But
actually, I'm in agreement with Jim on this. I think white privilege does exist. I think particularly white male privilege exists, because I've seen it from the standpoint of a woman. Perhaps not as much now, but having sat in mathematics classes in college and being told by 2 professors, one of whom was the chair of the department, that women did not belong in mathematics. And so you might as well drop now because I am going to fail you. This is the first day before they have any background on you. This does exist. I have seen too many examples of people being judged simply because of the color of their skin. All you have to do is, and I read this online a while back when we were discussing another topic, that if you take people and they're walking down the street on both sides of the street, they will tend to, if there is a black person on the other side of the street, they will not cross the street. Or if a black person is approaching them, they will immediately go to the other side of the street. They are being judged by the color of their skin. Now, this may be their cultural background. There may be a lot of reasons for this. But it's that privilege. The white man is not automatically assumed to be dangerous. But that black man, there's a trigger inside the brain that says, I need to be afraid of that person, or I have to be cautious around them. Yeah. You know, we can recently, you know, with the stop and frisk rules that were in place in New York City, and there are those that praise them, saying that they cut down on crime. If you look at the percentages of blacks that were stopped as opposed to whites, the idea with the white privilege, the white person does not have to have that fear of being stopped and questioned simply because of the color of his or her skin.
Yeah. Let me read some of these and get to a couple of them where I just told Jim that's impossible. Well, I'll get to the first one that pops into my mind as being impossible. I can go into a music shop and count on finding the music of my race represented. Into a supermarket and find the staple foods that fit with my cultural traditions. And into a hairdresser's shop and find someone who can cut my hair. Number one, are there music shops around anymore? Are they? And you
There's
can't.
one in Akron I know of. That's where I go to buy, if I want to buy music that I like, I have to go to Akron. If I want my hair cut, and that one you mentioned, I have had to go to, I've been going to Akron since I've been 16 or 17, to Akron, to a black barber, because no one in Wadsworth would ever cut my hair. My wife took my kids to one barbershop in Wadsworth, and he said, I will not cut your hair. So I took them where I was going.
Yeah, yeah. I guess my question is, I don't ever, even when there were music shops that I went into, and it seemed like blues, jazz, hip hop, now, it was always available.
But the majority of what you saw were from white artists.
Well, that's true. I know the history of jazz and so forth, this country, and folk music and all this roots stuff. And I mean, rock and roll didn't start with Elvis Presley.
No, it did not.
You know,
Little Richard.
it came out of a rich history of black influenced music, and that was not recognized for many, many years.
Well, and then black performers would do the song, and it would be only played on certain radio stations. And then that song would be appropriated by a white singer, and that's what got the mass appeal. Exactly what Elvis Presley did.
Right.
So.
Okay, when I look
maybe it's where you live. Like, for instance, just in the last several months, I've been traveling a lot, and I was down in Washington, D.C. for a few days. It seemed to be a very vibrant, culturally mixed people. You get in a cab, and the gentleman, you know, driving the cab has lived here for 20 years, and he has an Arabic station on.
Yeah.
And you go places, you see people of all different colors, shapes and sizes, very diverse. We were down in San Antonio, Texas, a very diverse culture, a lot of Mexicans, Hispanics, South Americans, because they have a high military presence there with several bases. You know, a very diverse, and I don't know if I ever felt threatened, or I don't want to diminish. I'm certain that Jim has had the experiences that he's had, and it's unfortunate.
I guess what I'm thinking about is 2016, and there have been a lot of changes. I benefited a great deal in my early career about being white. I got jobs that black guys couldn't get.
Right.
They just simply weren't. In fact, I worked for a company where the CEO looked a wonderful man in the eye who wanted nothing more than to be a salesman. And he said, "We're not ready to have a black salesman in this company." And this was after 1964. So, I mean, I'm not, certainly not denying. What I'm concerned about now is artificially driving a wedge. That we've made a lot of progress, and I'd like to see the progress continue. But as long as we do things like label all white people as racist based on the fact that they have privilege and power, and that a black person, no matter how much they hate anybody, can't be a racist.
It's not a matter of labeling all white people as being racist. It's a matter of the fact that black people will, and people of color, any person of color, is going to be placed in situations and have to deal with people that are racist, whether they realize it or not. All you have to do is watch some of the recent rallies for president and the comments that are made to people based upon their color and are based upon their religious views, that it does still exist. And the white person does not have to deal with that, where the person of color walks into those situations and has in their back of their mind, am I going to run into somebody today that is a racist, that is going to call me that slur,
Exactly.
is going to tell me to go back to Africa, is going to tell me to go to Auschwitz, which are some of the comments I've heard recently. And I think that's
Only a
the
science
concern.
nerd like me realizes that biologically there's no such thing as race. We all came out of Africa. We're all human race. We can all make babies with each other.
Yes.
Therefore, we're the same race. So it's a cultural phenomenon, and it's the fear of the other. And I mean, we've been doing it for a long time.
You know, as a concept, it's obsolete to begin with.
Yeah.
And that I was reading something about the survey done on Americans and their feelings toward interracial marriage, and about 88% of Americans are in favor or have no objection. But anyway, I want to read some of these things. These are white privilege statements. If I wish, I can arrange to be in the company of people of my own race most of the time. I can go shopping alone most of the time, pretty well assured that I will not be followed or harassed. I can turn on the television or open the front page of the paper and see people of my race widely represented. When I am told about our national heritage or about civilization, I am shown that people of my color made it what it is. I can be pretty sure about having my voice heard in a group in which I am the only member of my race. Well, we read the music shop thing. Whether I use checks, credit cards, or cash, I can count on my skin color to not work against my appearance of financial reliability. I do not have to educate my children to be aware of systemic racism for their own daily physical protection. I can be pretty sure that my children's teachers and employers will tolerate them if they fit school and workplace norms. My chief worries about them do not concern others' attitudes toward their race. That's a sample. That's probably about a fourth of the items on this list. I read those in 2016 and think some of them are dated, some of them are exaggerated, some of them are the result of black paranoia, and others are absolutely right on the nose as I go down through this list. And I guess I'm torn between two things. Martin Luther King Jr. was a hero to me, and that his concept of the table of brotherhood and racial harmony is something that I've been looking forward to that day since June 30, 1957. I'll explain that some other time. But it's when I discovered racism, and and I was almost 18 years old. But the fact is that if we concentrate on these things, it only serves to separate us and move us farther away from that table of brotherhood. Yeah, I know these things are some of these things are the product of population distribution. Others about pure marketing. In fact, there's one on here that says that I can go in. I feel confident that I can go into a store and find Band-Aids that match my color. I can choose blemish cover or bandages in flesh color and have those be more or less match my skin. The drugstore that I use in Akron, I can't find any Band-Aids to match my flesh color.
Neither can I.
You come to my drugstore.
The point is he has to find
I heard
one
a black
single
comedian say
drugstore
that,
allows
comment
him
on
to
that
do
in the 1960s.
Well, they're all different colors now. You know, you got orange.
Well,
and
yeah,
red.
but the fact is, it's marketing. I mean, if you were a merchant and trying to cater to the black population in Wadsworth or Cuyahoga Falls, where I grew up, you'd go broke. You're going to have some things on your shelves that nobody can buy. I mean,
Well, there are ethnic things for hair, but when you go in the store, you know where they are? They're separated from the other hair products, and it says ethnic,
I know.
and that to me aggravates me.
What would you like it to say?
I don't want to say anything.
Oh.
I can look at it and tell whether it's for me or not. I know what I use on my hair. You know what you use on your hair. It doesn't say white over here and ethnic over here.
Yeah,
It doesn't
right.
need to be labeled. That is, to me, that's being racist. I don't need that. And so when I go in a store, I expect to look at the products, not whether they're for me or for someone else.
Okay. Well, that was too good of a conversation because our time is up.
Okay.
Thank you very much. All right. I'll tell you what, I'm going to share this with you. Oh, God, we're still on the camera and I'm chatting away here.